in the case of compact binary systems. So we shall not cover other very important theoretical aspects, notably those concerning the test of GR and alternative modified gravity theories. I guess that this will be covered in other talks in this workshop. But we shall focus on analytical, in agreement with one of the titles of the workshop this week, analytical approximations, methods in general relativity in order to build accurate templates for the inspiral and merger of compact binary systems. So we all know the detections that have been done by the LIGO-Virgo detectors. Here this is the first detection of two black holes, and we know that the signals are extremely clean. They can be compared directly with a theoretical prediction from GR concerning the motion and radiation of two-body system in GR, purely gravitational two-body system in GR, that is a two black hole system. So the templates built from GR using approximation methods or numerical methods have the form of the famous chirp of gravitational waves. This is a long in-spiral phase which will be described by analytic post-Newtonian methods, which is somehow matched to a numerical calculation, direct numerical integration of the Einstein field equation for two black holes, and then a ring-down phase in which the final state will be in GR a Kerr black hole, and this ring-down phase can be described as well by perturbation theory, black hole perturbation theory, black hole perturbation around the final Kerr black hole in GR or in any alternative theory of gravity. The two post-Newtonian, initial post-Newtonian waveform and final numerical waveform must be matched. For instance, in blue you have the numerical waveform, and in red the post-Newtonian waveform. This chirp concerns the in-spiral and merger of two black holes. In the case of neutron stars, the templates will be very different in the late stage of evolution of these systems, but the in-spiral waveform will be actually the same. In GR, at least, the signal is expected to depend only on the masses of the two objects, the two point particles, possibly with spins initially, but it can be either black holes or neutron star or more complicated, more exotic objects like naked singularities or more bosonic stars and so on. This will be a universal form for the in-spiral. And then the merger and post-merger waveform will be quite different and will depend on the internal structure of the two neutron stars, and in particular the equation of state of the neutron stars. So the methods that are used in GR to compute these templates, these waveforms, can be described in this figure, where we have here a small velocity parameter or compactness parameter. We have a self-gravitating system, therefore the velocity square is related to the gravitational potential of the binary. We shall have a strong field regime, high velocity relativistic regime here, and a weak field slow motion regime here. And on the other axis, we plot the mass ratio between the two masses, M1 and M2, the so-called symmetric mass ratio. So when the two black holes are far apart, the orbital motion is slow with respect to the speed of light. The post-Newtonian approximation will be a very good description of the dynamics and radiation. On the other hand, when the field is strong, velocities are relativistic, but the mass ratio between the two objects is small. We describe the motion of a small black hole around a big black hole, then perturbation theory will be used, black hole perturbation theory will be used, the theory of gravitational self forces will be used. I will come back to this theory later. And when we are in the strong field regime and we have also comparable masses, this is a very difficult problem which is tackled and solved by numerical relativity. However, on the top of these, I would say, fundamental methods, we have also effective methods which interpolate between these various fundamental methods, for instance, by interpolating between the post-Newtonian regime for the inspiral and the numerical regime for the merger. And there are two main methods that are the effective one-body approach and the inspiral merger ring-down approach that are both used in the data analysis of the detector for black hole binary systems. Yes? Yes, please. Yes? Yes, absolutely, yes. Yes, exactly. I will thank you for your question. This is the last part of my talk. I will discuss the post-Minkowskian versus the post-Newtonian, and hope I will answer your questions at the end of the talk. Absolutely. So the templates are, for the moment, built in the following way. So I had the purely theorist point of view that it is made between, by a match between the initial post-Newtonian waveform developed to high order, 3.5 post-Newtonian order, which means 3.5 Pn order beyond the Einstein quadrupole formula for the wave field, and which is in principle matched to a numerical simulation. However, in practice for black hole binary systems, we need to describe also the intermediate regime between the post-Newtonian and the numerical relativity, and these are this is done using these effective methods, the inner spiral merger ring-down waveform, which assumes an intermediate phenomenological phase, which is described by some parameters that we try to match to numerical relativity, and the effective one-body waveform. And these two approaches are extensively used in the data analysis of the black hole systems. However, for neutron stars, the masses are much smaller, the detectors are sensitive only to the in-spiral waveform before the merger, and the templates are built essentially completely with the post-Newtonian waveform. Now, there are two problems in this field concerning the post-Newtonian approximation. The first problem is the one of the motion. So we want to go beyond the Newtonian motion for a system of n particles, and this was solved very in the early days of general relativity, and the corrections at order 1 Pn order v over c squared beyond the Newtonian approximation is well known. And this is for the motion of n particles or n planets, which is well known, the so-called Einstein-Feldhoffmann equations. On the other hand, there is the problem of the radiation field, and the radiation field, the first approximation, the lowest order approximation for the radiation field is provided by the quadrupole formula. And there are various quadrupole formulas. There is the one for the flux, named after Einstein, and the one for the amplitude. There is also a quadrupole formula for the angular momentum, linear momentum, hopefully also for the center of mass position. And there is also a radiation reaction quadrupole formula, which shows that the effect is a very small effect of order 2.5 Pn order beyond the Newtonian approximation. So it's a very small effect which will go at order 1 over C5 with respect to the Newtonian and 1 Pn corrections. On the other hand, there is another formalism that has been developed in the 60s, 70s, which deals with the rigorous investigation of the Einstein field equation very far away from an isolated matter system. This is the so-called Bondi-Sachs-Penrose formalism that has been developed very much and still is undergoing a lot of progress recently. You investigate the general structure of the field asymptotically far from your system, near Scri+, where you will have your detector, and you can have derive from the Einstein field equation the main feature of these of the field near Scri+. This method is extremely important. However, it is not connected to the matter source, and therefore we cannot build templates from that method solely. And you have to describe also your matter source, which will be a compact binary system, for instance. And you have to provide to compute, to solve the Einstein field equation in all the region outside your system and inside the system. And the method that has actually provided the templates in LIGO Virgo is based on approximation method, and it started with a so-called multipolar post-Minkowskian expansion of the field outside the source in the form of a nonlinearity expansion or post-Minkowskian expansion, and assuming that each coefficient in the post-Minkowskian expansion in powers of j is a function of multiple moments of the source. At this stage, the multiple moments are just function of time describing your isolated source, but you are not yet connected to your matter source. But nevertheless, this method gives you the most general solution of the Einstein field equation outside your matter system. It depends on multiple moments that are for the moment left undetermined. They describe your source, which will be completely arbitrary. And furthermore, this solution is valid not only at very far away from your source, but also very close, but if you are still in the exterior, but it recovers the Bondi-Sachs formalism at infinity, which is a very good point. Nevertheless, this field has still to be connected to the internal field of your system, and we do this by connecting it to a post-Newtonian solution inside the system, and the connection is made by an asymptotic matching into some intermediate region outside your source, which is both in the weak field regime so that your post-Newtonian solution applies, and also outside your source so that your multipolar expansion applies also. And this technique is very powerful. This is a particular case of the method of asymptotic expansion, matched asymptotic expansion. There is an equation that we use, which is what we call the matching equation, which gives you a condition which permits to solve completely your problem for the field both outside your source, including the regions at infinity, and inside your source, provided that your source can be described by a post-Newtonian expansion. That is, the velocities inside are typically small with respect to the speed of light. Using this method, you can compute formulas developed to high post-Newtonian order beyond the Einstein quadruple formula, so you have plenty of terms, up to, say, 3.5 Pn order. The 4.5 Pn order term is also known. And from this term, you have various nonlinearities which come into play. And the first nonlinear term is due to tails. It arises at 1 over C3, 1.5 Pn order term. And there are various contributions. And so this is formula. So this gives you the flux of energy in the form of gravitational waves. And now this is the main input that you need for your templates, because you will have an energy balance argument between the loss of energy in your source and the flux emitted in radiation. And from this balance equation, using that expression of the flux and the expression of the energy, conservative energy given by the equations of motion of your system, by equating them, you deduce the evolution of the orbital phase and orbital frequency of your system. And this is a chirp, which is directly compared to the observations. And so such formula at high order is already actually relevant for the first black hole detections. Despite the fact that there are not many orbital cycles before the merger for black hole, typically 10 or 20. But already with the two events of 2015 in September and December, you can already check the post-Newtonian parameters up to 3.5 pn order. The precision is not very good for the highest parameters, but you see that already, say at 1.5 pn order, which is a tail coefficient, only from these detections of black holes, you can say that this tail effect is indeed consistent with observation to within 10%. So this is a very good point, and we think that with now the observations of neutron-star binaries, future observations, and notably with LISA detectors in space, this post-Newtonian expansion will be checked very, very accurately in the near future. Yes? The? Yes. Yeah, I will comment on that. So you can check that the scale of the log is correct? Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. Actually, there is a log which appears here, and there is also a log which appears here. And this log can be computed using dimensional regularization. And this is completely matched with, sorry, I can show you. There is this log which appears here, and which is computed using dimensional regularization. But actually, dimensional regularization check for you terms which appear here, notably this term depends very much has been computed only by dimensional regularization, and other regularization scheme failed. But I will come back, if you like, to dimensional regularization a little bit later. Okay, so now let us come back to the problem of the motion. The state of the art for the motion is 4pn approximation, beyond the Newtonian approximation. You will recognize your Newtonian term, the 1pn Lorentz, Droz, and Steinin-Feldhoffmann term. And then we go up to 4pn order. And at 4pn order, there are two approaches that have given the full result. One is based on the ADM Hamiltonian formalism of GR, and the other one is based on the Fokker-Lagrangian in GR. These two approaches have completed the problem at 4pn order, but in the first approach, there is still an ambiguity parameter that has not been determined from first principle, and only this approach with the Fokker-Lagrangian gave recently a complete calculation, including the determination of the last ambiguity parameters. There are another approach very important in this field, which is based on the effective field theory, and this approach has almost completed this calculation, but there are still some terms to be computed in this, but we expect that soon this approach will complete also the problem. So our team on the 4pn team on the equations of motion using the Fokker-Lagrangian approach is with Laura Bernard, Alejandro Boé, Guillaume Farey, Tanguy Marchand, and Sylvain Marsat. And there is a series of papers, and especially the last paper where we completed the determination of the last ambiguity parameter. And I will just review a little bit this calculation, which is quite interesting also from the theoretical point of view, because there are many subtle effects at 4pn order. So our approach is based on the Fokker action. That is, we start from the Einstein-Hilbert action of GR. We have a part of the action which describes the point particles. We assume that there is no internal structure for the particles. So this is a standard expression of the action for point particles. Then we derive the Einstein field equation from that, and we solve using our favorite Pn expansion the solution, and we found the metric depending explicitly on the particles. And we replace back this solution into the action, and this gives you the Fokker action. And now, when we have the Fokker action, we have the equations of motion by varying that action. It's a very powerful method, which works very well in the post-Newtonian framework. Now, the first problem that we encounter at 4pn order, that was not present in previous approximations, is the problem of the tail. As we have seen in the waveform, the tail is an order 1.5 pn order beyond the Einstein quadruple formula, which is itself 2.5 pn order. So this is a 4pn term in the equations of motion and a 1.5 pn term in the radiation field. In the radiation field, this is the coefficient 4 pi in the flux, for instance. And here, this term has to be taken into account in the equations of motion at that order, 4pn. And this gives you a contribution to the Fokker action, which is non-local. It's a tail. There is an integration over all the past of your source. And this gives you some particular problems because your action is no longer a local action in time. But so, therefore, for instance, the Hamiltonian equations associated with that involve functional derivatives rather than ordinary derivatives. There are several problems associated with that, which can be solved nevertheless. And in the far zone, there is the usual tail effect, including a logarithmic coefficient, which is well known. On the other hand, there is a problem of dimensional regularization. There is, at 3pn order already, you have a problem with the regularization, which will be a UV-type regularization due to the particles that we use, without just point particle without structure. And at 3pn order already, it was shown that we know that dimensional regularization is actually the only regularization which is able to solve completely the problem. And of course, here we are completely borrowing dimensional regularization from quantum field theory, and it was already shown that dimensional regularization is an extremely powerful regularization to be used. And in our approach, dimensional regularization is followed by a renormalization. We call it also by a shift. We shift the trajectories of the particle in order to absorb the poles that are generated at 3pn order. So and after absorbing the poles, we can check that everything is finite and gives you the correct result. But at 4pn order, not only are there, yes? Well, this is a bit difficult. The interactions becomes very much nonlinear, and therefore there are functions which are very much singular at the location of the two particles. And these poles, they correspond to logarithmic divergences in 3 dimensions, which provide these poles.
In field theory, that would be some sort of resonance. In standard field theory,
yes.
You saw a pole, you think there's some resonance that you're.
Yes, I don't think that there is the same interpretation here.
Can I ask you about how do you distinguish the near and far zones? Well, how do you distinguish near and far zones?
Well, we can introduce, for instance, a scale, the size of the near zone, okay, and split every integral.
How are you defining that size? The size. What determines the size?
No. The size will cancel out always at the end of the calculation. So there is no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there is a size which comes in, there is a pole, and then the finite part will depend on the size. But when you perform a shift, or if you like, a coordinate transformation, all that will disappear, and at the end, physical observables are independent of the size, and of course, are finite. Well, you need to include the renormalization. Yeah. 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 If I may just correct a little bit, there is no mass renormalization here. All the renormalization is in the trajectories, the world lines of the particles. In self-force calculation, you do have a mass renormalization, but not here. But okay, that's okay. But at 4p order, there is also the infrared divergences that appear. That is, the Einstein-Hilbert action is divergent at infinity, and we have to cope that. And in our initial calculation, we use a regularization of the infrared divergences that is based on the Hadamard regularization. So there is a particular process that we use, which is actually motivated by a matching between the near zone and the far zone done in 3 dimensions for general sources. And this Hadamard regularization actually yields to results that are not in agreement with gravitational self-force calculations. And we conjecture that actually, if you use different regularization for the infrared, assuming that DIMREG deals with the UV, you find that there is always 2 parameters that are ambiguous. There are hundreds of parameters that are completely fixed, but 2 parameters are ambiguous. This is in our approach, the Fokker-Lagrangian. In the ADM Hamiltonian formalism, there is 1 parameter which is ambiguous. These parameters have been fixed by comparing with an external, another method based on gravitational self-force approach, perturbation theory, black hole perturbation theory, deviation from the motion of a background geodesics, which implies particular values of these parameters. So we know their values. However, of course, we want to compute them from scratch here within the post-Newtonian approximation. And this is where dimensional regularization again plays a very important role and a very powerful method. So we corrected the Hadamard regularization of our infrared divergences using a particular process based on analytic continuation in a parameter B. There is a characteristic constant associated with that regularization. And we corrected that using dimensional regularization, including a particular scale associated with dimensional regularization. And we added the difference to that, which implies that there are some poles, infrared poles, that appear. And logarithm involving the scales that are not, of course, determined, that are completely arbitrary. However, there is also the tail term to be added, and the tail term has also to be computed in d dimensions, okay? And we find that the tail term involves a pole, which is this time a UV pole. And we found that the UV pole that is here completely cancels the infrared pole, which is there. Therefore, the result is finite. And in addition, there are some pure numbers that appear, and which gives you exactly the values of the parameters that we needed, the ambiguity parameters. And so we were able to compute the 2 ambiguity parameters from scratch using this. By the way, the computation of the tail is done also by effective field theory approach using diagrams. And actually, this is a diagram for this interaction, which is given by a diagram like that. And our colleagues from effective field theory have obtain also exactly the same answer for the tail term, and with the pole and so on. And they argue that there will be also the infrared pole coming from the rest of the integration. That should cancel. There are general arguments in effective field theory. And so we think that they will be able also to compute the full equations of motion, including the ambiguity parameters. On the other hand, the Hamiltonian formalism is not able to fix the value of their last ambiguity parameter because there is missing in this approach a consistent matching between the near zone and the far zone, which is able to fix for you the value of the tail term and this coefficient, which is crucial with respect to the rest of your calculation. So I would like now to move a little bit to another topic. If I have, okay. And the second topic, which is related, will be a comparison between the post-Newtonian approximation and perturbation theory. So perturbation theory means black hole perturbation theory, and I come back to my figure here. Perturbation theory will be valid for binaries with a small mass ratio between the two black holes, okay? And I would like to compare this perturbation theory with post-Newtonian approximation. And therefore, I will choose a binary system which is both in the slow motion, weak field regime, that is, the black holes are rather far apart from each other, and on the other hand, that have a small mass ratio so that I can use my perturbation theory. The problem of the perturbation theory, called the gravitational self-force approach, is a very important problem that has been solved both by numerical method and analytical ones. We look for the motion of a small black hole and the deviation to the geodesics of the background due to the presence of the particle itself. So the self-force is proportional to the mass of the small black hole, and we work typically at first order in the mass ratio, okay, beyond the background geometry. And there are recently progress in the second order perturbation approach, the so-called second order self-force calculations, but that are not completely solved for the moment. And so we limit ourselves to the first order in the mass ratio. We look also for a particular case which allows a comparison with the post-Newtonian approximation. And this particular case will be very simple, a case of circular orbits. Exactly circular orbits. Indeed, in that case, the self-force people are able to get an observable associated with the symmetry of your space-time, and the symmetry is an helicoidal symmetry. There is a helicoidal killing vector associated with this exactly circular orbit. The space-time is helical symmetric. And the observable is called the redshift observable. It was introduced by Detweiler some years ago. And this is nothing but the invariant associated with the killing symmetry of your space-time. And the killing vector at the location of your particle is necessarily proportional to the forward velocity of your particle. And the redshift factor is simply the coefficient of proportionality between the killing vector at the location of your particle and the forward velocity of your particle. And the point is that people from self-forces compute this redshift factor numerically to very high precision, or even analytically to very high order. And us too, we can compute this redshift using simply our standard post-Newtonian machinery. Namely, the redshift is a redshift, so it is expressed in terms of the metric at the location of the particles, and this metric has to be expanded in post-Newtonian, regularized using our machinery, using DIMREG and so on, including the tails and tails of tails, and we can then compare to the numerical calculation of the self-force directly by Self-force methods. So let me just show a very big formula, which is the result for this redshift factor computed using self-force techniques in a post-Newtonian fashion. That is, you will have the Newtonian term, 1pn, 2pn, 3pn, 4pn, and many other terms. Of course, this method is extremely accurate and very precise because the method is valid in the strong field regime near the horizon of your big black hole. But it is restricted to the first order in the mass ratio. So this is simply the coefficient of the mass ratio to the power 1. So we neglect all second order perturbations. Now, post-Newtonian calculation can do also this calculation for any masses, and then we can take the limit of the small mass ratio and compare with the result. And in blue, these are calculations that have been done up to 3pn order or even 4pn order, and which relies very much on dimensional regularization and all this that we use, and which agrees totally with self-force calculations, which on the other hand have their own regularization methods and so on. So this gives it's a very important test of both methods. On the other hand, the PN calculation also includes tails and nonlinear effects in the form of tails, tail of tails, and so on. And we have also shown that some coefficients that are supposed to be in green, but I don't see them in green now. But okay, this coefficient at 5.5 pn order, this one at 6.5 pn, and this one at 7.5 pn are due to tails, tails of tails, and so on. And these are actually half-integer post-Newtonian approximation, which start at 5.5 pn order, and these have been computed. They depend on the machinery of nonlinear tails and so on, and they are also in perfect agreement with self-force calculations. Okay, and so my last topic, if I have still 5 minutes, will be a comparison between the post-Minkowskian approximation and the post-Newtonian approximation. So now I am using a different figure. I will write here again my squared velocity, v square, which is in my notation, very strange notation, but it is of order O1 over c square, which is a usual notation for post-Newtonian people. So here you will have the strong regime, strong field regime, or high velocity regime in the weak field regime, or high velocity regime in the strong field regime, which will be only valid for gravitationally bound systems. And on the other axis, I put the compactness parameter. That is m over r of your system. R is the size of the system, m is the mass, which is typically of order j, which is the parameter expansion, the parameter of the post-Minkowskian expansion. And here you have the parameter of the post-Newtonian expansion. Here you have gravitationally bound systems, so only circular orbits or elliptic band orbits can be described by both the post-Newtonian and post-Minkowskian. If you have very relativistic orbits but unbound system, you will describe your scattering of particles. Ultra-relativistic scattering of two particles, but of course you have an unbound system. And the post-Minkowskian approximation, valid in that region, will be very good at computing the ultra-relativistic scattering of particles. If you have a bound system, the post-Minkowskian approximation can be compared with the post-Newtonian, but of course, the precision in the post-Newtonian will not be very good because you will miss higher order post-Newtonian terms which come from your neglected g squared, g cubed terms in your post-Minkowskian calculation. But nevertheless, the comparison seems to be interesting. The post-Minkowskian approximation has been investigated since many, many years, of course, starting actually from the Einstein paper of 1916, first linear approximation. You will again expand your metric in terms of series in powers of j. You can solve iteratively at any order in principle the post-Minkowskian series in harmonic coordinates. And the scattering of two particles has been solved at 2 p.m. Order. On the other hand, we know also the Hamiltonian of n particles at the first post-Minkowskian order in closed form in some particular coordinate system, ADM coordinates, actually. And there have been a lot of works recently on the connection between the post-Minkowskian and the post-Newtonian. And let me show you our own recent contribution to this comparison. So we revisited only the first post-Minkowskian approximation, which is in principle quite well known, but actually we rewrote this first post-Minkowskian solution in a way which can be compared easily with high-order post-Newtonian calculations. So we have to solve the Einstein field equation in harmonic coordinates. So we choose harmonic coordinates, actually, and the choice of harmonic coordinates is something more difficult than in other coordinate system for this problem. We have the Liénard-Vickers solution for n particles, and the point is that we re-expand now the retardations. So there are all the retarded quantities. We re-expand that consistently with the order by, in small post-Minkowskian terms, the trajectories are straight line because acceleration are of order g, and therefore add a power of g, which can be neglected with this approximation. So we have closed form expression for the metric, and that can be, in principle, compared directly with post-Newtonian. And the acceleration associated with that, so you assume geodesic motion for the particle in the field of the other particles. And actually, using this re-expansion of retardation, the formulas are a bit complicated, but completely explicit for the acceleration and for the conserved energy. In particular, in harmonic coordinate, there are a nasty term, which has been difficult to form, but which is a non-trivial form of that term, and which is probably due to the harmonic coordinates. And from this expression, you can re-expand that in post-Newtonian order, okay? And you can check all in acceleration up to 4pn order, energy, and so on at 4pn order. So this is a good check, but only limited to first order in J, of course. And finally, we wanted also to look for the Lagrangian and Hamiltonian, and in particular to compare the Hamiltonian to the published result in the literature done in harmonic coordinates. And actually, the problem was more complicated than expected. First of all, in harmonic coordinates, the Lagrangian is not an ordinary Lagrangian, it is a generalized Lagrangian. It depends on accelerations also. It depends on positions, velocities, and accelerations. And we have a formula which permits to compute the Lagrangian at any order in the post-Newtonian approximation, but strangely enough, in the general, way, there is no closed form expression for the Lagrangian in harmonic coordinates, except in a particular case. And we use a formula which permits to relate the Lagrangian to the Hamiltonian, or the conserved energy. And this is a very simple formula which solves the Legendre transformation equation between the Lagrangian and the Hamiltonian. And I was surprised that I never found this formula, which is an integral solution of the Legendre transformation between the Lagrangian and Hamiltonian, as a closed form integral. Which should be, I think, useful in other branch of classical mechanics. But nevertheless, this formula permits to compare with the Lagrangian, with the Hamiltonian, and at least in a particular case, we found that there is indeed a canonical transformation of variable, which completes the comparison with them. Thank you very much.